What's up guys, it's Fire here, and today I'm going to be bringing you another one of my solo queued cheese strategies. So the tip today is going to work for mid and top lane, and it's not as risky as the previous tip, but does require you to kind of work together. So the tip basically is that you're going to go in and steal the buff that the enemy jungler isn't taking, and then return to lane with 75% of your level and also a buff. There's only a couple of tricks you really need to pull this tactic off. It's going to be firstly waiting around until 145, 150 and then entering the enemy jungle. This way people won't really be guarding anymore, and so you'll be able to get in unseen. Now the second thing is you really need to do this with a tanky sustained top lane or a top laner that started with cloth 5, because once you've done tanking the buff you really need to then get back to full health so you can go and lane properly. If you come onto lane and you've got no natural sustain or no health potions, then the enemy is just going to bully you out of lane, and there goes your advantage. As you'll probably have noticed, some of the clips that are playing are from my brother's games, and he's actually Diamond 1 and pulls this off quite often. So it works at low elo and high elo, and that's for a couple of reasons. So believe it or not, all my cheese strategies actually have some logic to them, and in this case it's no different. So I've said it's less risky than the previous invade strategy I gave you, and that's because you aren't really fighting anyone and there's very little chance of anyone going to see you. So you can see on the mini map at the moment I've marked the usual places that people guard. Now this strategy only really works on the buffs on the top half of the map, because it's more likely that jungler's going to start on the bottom half and take the smiteless from bot lane. Now this is because the support doesn't really lose anything from giving the smiteless. It has the least impact on the lane phase, whereas if top laner to give a smiteless, then he'd end up losing a couple of minions, his opponent would get level 2 first, and he'd lose a lot of his early pressure. So even though there are no mini camps now for the mid lane to help, it's still habit for the mid laner to sit with the jungler and protect him early. This means that it opens up the invade path I'm showing you now on the minimap, and it's very rare for anyone to actually be sitting there when you go in. Now the other piece of logic that makes this work is that if you actually get to the buff unseen, there is literally no reason for anyone to discover you doing it. Now the reason for this is because there's no top lane ever who has thought, I'm just going to go and randomly check my blue buffs not being stolen at 155, lose a couple of minions, but it's okay because I went and checked it. No one does that, and no one thinks like that, no one expects this to be happening, and therefore if you actually get to the buff, it's going to be yours to take. Now obviously this doesn't work every game, but even if it doesn't work, you're at very little risk of actually dying. By the time you do invade at 145, their whole team isn't going to be sitting in the brush, so even if their mid laner is and he sees you, they're not going to be able to kill you, you're simply just going to run away, no harm done, but there was a possibility of that buff steal. Now the other thing to note is that some junglers do still start on the top half of the map if they want to gank bottom or mid. So if that's the case, then when you go round you are going to discover the enemy jungler. Chances are they aren't even going to expect it, and you may even be able to pick up a kill if you sit patiently and wait in the brush. So the final thing I want to touch on then is why you should even bother doing this cheese strat and what it actually brings you. Because in my previous video it's pretty obvious, you got a kill, you got double buffs, and that's great and you can snowball, but in this one it's not so obvious. When you actually kill the buff, you do get 75% of a level if you share the experience. So that means you need 2 or 3 minions when you get into lane, and you're suddenly going to be level 2 and can go aggressive on the enemy laner. This is especially important in top lane. If you're playing someone like Riven for example, if you get your E and your Q, or your Q and your W, your kill potential goes through the roof if the enemy is still only level 1. Worst case scenario you blow their flash, best case scenario you get a kill. The second thing is that you get a buff and the enemy jungler doesn't. So the enemy jungler missing one of his buffs means that after the rework, that's a whole level of experience that he's not going to gain. And that means that especially if it's his blue buff, his clear time will be slower, and so he'll have less opportunity to gank. If it's his red buff, it means his ganks will be weaker and there's more chance of you escaping because he doesn't have the slow. So even though this is a really cheesy thing to do, there are actually a ton of benefits for pulling this off effectively, and people really don't expect this to happen. So you can probably pull this off in around 75% of your games, so it'll give you a huge advantage and really help your early game. So that's my second cheese strat for you there guys, and I hope you found that useful. Obviously this is less risky, so it's less rewarding than my previous strategy, but you'll be able to use it more regularly, so I think it's still going to be useful for you. I've got a lot more of these cheese stats ready, so let me know in the comments if you'd like me to post more of them. If you enjoyed this video, please do like it and subscribe. Follow me on Twitch and like my Facebook, and I'll catch you next time.